more, a little bit more planning, and I don't want to be cut short on any type of, planning activities. And gonna put, yeah, our whole heart into it and really make it something special.
Great, thank you. So then the other part of our work is focusing on a couple of different things. One is really about the future of the Great Lakes region and how food systems are evolving, but also how they must evolve. As everybody is well aware of, there's tremendous forces such as trade, tariffs, overproduction. There's so many issues in agriculture that are going to be driving what I think are a lot of very large systematic changes over the next few years. I'm deeply concerned about small and mid-sized farmers, but I'm also really concerned from 2020 for when we realized that areas like Chicago, which is one of the largest producing, Illinois, the biggest producer of soybeans, the second largest producer of corn, but yet we really weren't feeding people here in Illinois with Illinois grown products during a time when food was a really crucial issue. And that was kind of a wake up call for me. And then in digging around, we found that 80% of the food consumed in the Chicagoland region is imported into the state, which was a pretty surprising thing. The suburb that I live in, Crete, used to be part of a much larger food system that fed the city of Chicago and other cities across the country. And our vision is to bring that back and support farmers to make the transition, perhaps from large row crops to smaller, more diversified operations, and operations that can allow for a lot more regenerative production that's going to be friendlier to our soil and our water and our air. I think if you've paid attention over the last couple of years, we've had the return of dust storms, which we have not seen in the state of Illinois since the 1930s. That is another real cause of concern. And so that is one of the drivers. The second driver is what I will let Bob introduce, which is our vision for a regenerative agriculture center and a greater plan for the food system in Chicago.
So, Bob. All right. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, Laura and Michelle, for thinking through the whole field trip issue. I would like to suggest that, the presentation that we tested out on May 8th, Tim, with this sort of global vision of the lake, the global vision of the Great Lakes and what it's going to mean for the rest of the century, beyond, et cetera. And then the more specific, concrete, let's move things forward. Now, my understanding is that the August 22nd date that Illinois House Ag Committee Chair Sonia Harper in Englewood has saved that date. I would like to propose that we put together a much scaled down sort of event, and if Tim, if you would be available, that we just go to Englewood. And, without buses and logistics and all that, we just go and sit down with Rep. Harper and share this vision, put on this presentation, put something together that doesn't require a lot of organizing, but just takes advantage of the fact that Rep. Harper is really, really interested in being a leader for all of agriculture, but specifically for her own community's agriculture. And everything that we're working towards, I think, is something that's going to be really helpful to her. So does that make sense, Laura, Michelle? Michelle, you could like join via Zoom or something. You wouldn't have to come to Englewood, but I think that there's a lot going on there. Like, so since I think in terms of the presentation, Laura, could you pull up the PDF that I just sent, this, especially for the new folks? There's some new information and old information here that would be best suited with some illustrations. If you could put that up there.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay, great. So I've been putting together a proposal for a project I want to approach Open Lands with to serve as the fiscal agent. But the idea is the idea is calling Building Chicagoland's Local Farm Economy is the name of the project. And the opportunity that's shaping up here is for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance to expand habitat conservation in the entire four-state Lake Michigan Basin region uh, by facilitating creation of a program to, quote, grow Chicagoland's agriculture, ag tech, and food processing center into a national model for equitable growth and innovation. And that quote came from a 2022 Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning Economic Development report. And there's no constituency that's stepping forward to seize that opportunity to be the leader. And I really think that we could make this, the Growing with Ag Committee could be the leader of making that happen. And the whole idea has been to you ready to pop that up, Laura? Or where are we at here?
Am I not showing?
I was on. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Thanks. Yeah. So go to the next slide, please. Then, next slide. Okay. So we'll keep it here for a while. So the idea is to do a 1-year project, to do a 1-year project that will, go along with a timeline that Open Lands Policy Director Chris Kessler put together in this last legislative session. We worked with Senator Rachel Ventura of Joliet. She introduced a bill to establish an agri-food infrastructure investment task force, which would have established a process to identify an alternative use for the 7-square-mile Peatone Airport site. That's that little purple piece in the middle down here in the middle of that triangle. And so the idea is we need to build a broad base of support for an alternative plan for the airport. Number two, we got to get that bill reintroduced in January for the 2026 session. And number three, we want to get it passed by the end of May of 2026, at which time the state legislatures expected to be considering a proposal to turn that 7-square-mile proposed Peatone Airport site into a cargo airport. And in the 40 years that this project has been discussed, there's never been a discussion about a viable alternative, and that's really on us to be able to do. So I anticipate a project that I'm finalizing the proposal and want to be approaching Open Lands in the next week or so. Five parts, and the 4 bullet points here are really the guts of it. But number one is to establish a task force or steering committee within the Growing with Ag Committee, where we will just basically use participation. We'll invite greater participation. Jillian, I'm glad you're on from AFT. I've spoken with Claire Shipp, the Midwest Policy Director. She's very interested in this project. There's other groups that we could, through this project, get engaged in the initiative. Chicago Food Policy Action Council, the Will County Health Department Food Nutrition Access Team, the Will and Cook County Farm Bureaus, Will and South Cook Soil and Water Conservation District. And the way we sustain participation is through the provision of project updates that drive strategic actions built around consensus and mutual benefits, and really around the 4 bullet points here. The first one listed here, showcase innovators. We're looking to direct a public information campaign that showcases the innovators and then amplifies the innovators' voices through strategies that advance the project goals. And the goal is really to use a discussion of alternative plan for the Peatone Airport site as a regenerative agriculture research and development center that will inform the development of the entire 4-state region into an agri-food leader in the world, really. And so but what do I mean by directing a public information campaign? So it's like we will generate a steady drumbeat of project messages through content disseminated through 4 different channels. Number one, Local Food Forum, it's a digital platform, and they would be a project partner. We'd just be generating content on an ongoing basis. Number two, legacy media outlets. That means working, for example, the Chicago Tribune has just started this fabulous, Karina Atkins, I believe is her name. She started this fabulous series about the future of agriculture for the Chicago Tribune. And so that would be one example of where we would be placing content on an ongoing basis to support the project goals. Number three is legacy media news digests. The Politico has an Illinois playbook that is a daily digest, weekday digest of news, and it's a must read for anyone in Illinois politics. And then there's also self-help. It's a national credit union. They have a healthy food systems weekly update, and they have published content that could inform a dialogue at the national level. And then fourthly would be social media channels. I think we'd be inviting any and all Alliance members that have a communications team to be sharing this content and really to be building interest for the overall project goals. And I go back to Ted had, when in the run up to the May 8th meeting, we had Ted had shared something, how do we protect farmland before it disappears? Were some of the questions I just found these notes. Ted had asked, how do we protect farmland before it disappears? And I think it's through a reframing of the challenge. It's an ecosystem services market is going to be the driver of recurring funding streams as we figure out how to monetize the benefits of water recharge, wildlife habitat, carbon sequestration, and soil health. Soil health is going to be a real driver. And how do we prepare agriculture for a changing climate? It's by improving the business climate for farmland owners and operators. And the role of regional food systems and infrastructure and building resilience. And this is all information that we'll put out in through the storytelling and then these other three components I'm about to get to. But the role of Will County is where this project is based, and there's county level leadership coming out of Will County where they went to their National Association of Counties and say we need county level leadership to create a viable local food systems that will be present in the case of an emergency event, as we learned during COVID when the grocery shelves were empty of produce and meat. And so that local food system needs to be developed as a viable complement to the global supply chain, not a replacement for. It's like we need to find ways for them to complement each other, and that's really the beauty of the vision of the ag team, of like connecting up all the different kind of groups under a nature conservation effort. The second point is and then finally, what's missing from the ag debate, and it's a coherent media narrative. So if we're driving content on a regular basis using all those channels, we're going to be shaping a discussion. And, as we learned, this group organized a meeting on November of 2023 at the Village of Monee. Tim organized it, and there is just a craving in Eastern Will County for an alternative plan for the Peatone Airport site. And then there's also really keen interest at the regional level. Just as recently as June 2nd, there was a Crane Chicago Business article that referred to the 40-year-old planning of the Public Works project of Peatone as a mirage. So we need to present the policymakers, including the ones who are the proponents, for a better idea of how the region can grow. The second item, agri-food asset map, that's where we're going to create a methodology to pinpoint the financial investment needs. And we're going to use this 3-county geography from Englewood up where Rep. Harper is based, and then Will County over in the county seat of Joliet, and then down into Pembroke Township and Kankakee. That triangle, that 3-county area, there's thousands of square miles of land. It's urban, suburban, exurban, and rural geographies. And there's never been a sort of a dialogue process that figures out how we all work together. So the agri-food asset map that John Stephen and I and another colleague who's got 50 years of experience in meat processing, we're going to take a look at two questions will drive the inquiry. Who's producing what in this 3-county geography? And the producer needs then will drive identification alignment with infrastructure components, supplying all markets and uncover new investment opportunities. The initial tri-county findings on cattle, hog, lamb, goat production will be applied to a 20-county geography. Our meat processing guy says if we really want to look at meat processing capacity, we got to look at the broader area. So that would be one of the components that we develop. But all this content would be shared on an ongoing basis, starting with the monthly, with this task force within the Growing with Ag Committee. It'll be shared with the media. We'll build a pool of media contacts that will share information. And then the third element, the third component is community planning, and this is where we're going to develop a Will County agricultural quality of life plan that enables this project to engage 4 alliance teams. So there's the Growing with Ag Committee that, us right here, but also bringing in the people that Ted and Laura work with, taking climate action, protecting healthy water, managing healthy landscapes, bring in a consultant who will facilitate a series of community-led public forums and charrettes that will tap the local interests to support the alternatives. We'll utilize the agri-food sort of economics that we're putting forward to shape the dialogue, and move in the direction of building out a plan that will shape an alternative from the Piatone thing, and we'll look at what kind of jobs can be created, not just in the short term for construction and for low paying warehousing, but for the kind of jobs and wealth creation that could be that could result from many generations to come from a well functioning agriculture system. And the fourth and the final point here is to produce a report to the General Assembly with recommendations for the design of an Illinois Good Food Fund that would enable food and farmer growers access to adequate resources for technical assistance, land, operating, and operating capital and other needs. And I think that this could get done through, we need to propose that this take place through the Illinois Finance Authority. They have an Illinois Climate Bank, but they don't know how to work at all with working land constituencies, and we need to bring that forward. Since the the April quarterly meeting of the Wilderness Alliance, Ted, you and I were talking and about bringing this proposal forward after the end of the legislative session, and you encouraged me to work on the legislative side of things. And what's happened just over the last 2 months, working with Rep. Harper, the Illinois House Ag Committee chair, and then reaching out, I've reached out to some financing stakeholders that were involved in a report that I wrote, a 2009 Illinois Local and Organic Food and Farm Task Force report to the General Assembly on finance. And then I updated it in a 2021 Chicago Food Policy Action Council report to the identified all the assets of the financing assets. So we need to bring that forward. And I anticipate, I've already had very positive reactions from financial lenders who they want to lend their intellectual capital to the discussion about how we combine all the funding sources. The initial Compeer Financial and the Farm Credit System, largest ag lender, they are very interested in this project because we started it in 2009 and it just hasn't gone forward. And from Farm Credit System's perspective, they say we need to figure out how we get all the financial sector stakeholders. So it's Farm Credit System, community banks, credit unions, philanthropy, and public finance agencies. How do we get them all working together? So that would emerge from, we're the steering committee is sort of guiding the process. Secondly, we're pushing out media content in an ongoing basis. We're coming up with this new kind of regional agri-food economics model. Thirdly, we've got this community planning process. It's really building the bridge between working land and natural land constituency around, ecosystem and everything else that the Alliance stands for. And then fourthly, how do we pay for all this thing? Next slide, please, Laura. So I should have brought this up sooner. So this is what we're, I mean, again, this is what we're looking at here. And it's just a whole new way of thinking. You look at that slide on the right, there's just been no organized effort to say, wow, that light blue thing, that's a good starting point for a nature-based economy instead of more concrete and asphalt. So anyway, I mean, this slide right here, this is kind of a visual that we want to put out and really sell in the regional marketplace of ideas. Next slide. So the idea here is really for a regional partner. This was in 2018. I referenced before how, CMAP in 2022 and it said that, we really need to look at, there needs to be a strategic plan for all of the agricultural economy, and just crickets. No one's moved forward on it since 22. And this quote came from the 2018 plan that CMAP put together for, called On to 2050, that some entity that doesn't yet exist needs to pull together all the constituencies within agriculture. And the interesting thing here is, and now I'm getting ready to take this forward to go back to open lands. Next slide, please. Is that this really aligns with, we're in a situation regionally that is regional agriculture today is where regional environmental protection was in 1963. And at that time, there was this organization called the Welfare Council of Metropolitan Chicago that established a program called Open Lands Project, which eventually turned into an independent entity in 1968. And now, over the last 6 decades, Open Lands has become this conservation trailblazer, advancing land preservation, environmental protection. My understanding is that there was no metropolitan region in the country doing it. So where Open Lands is now is they work in this, the pink is their 3-county priority landscape, and the Midewin Tallgrass Prairie piece that juts to the southwest there, that's just immediately to the west of the Peatone Airport site. And so if we're getting this dialogue going, we're building this bridge between an investment plan that aligns working lands and natural lands. And then the 9-county service area is the, it's the collar counties and the ring around the collar counties. And then they're also wanting to work in the broader 38 county Chicago Alliance. Next slide, please. So just in the last, one of the I'm working with elected officials. I'm in conversation with elected officials, Republicans, Democrats, municipal, county, state, federal, and it just kind of moving, sort of incubating this whole concept. And one of the developments since we all last spoke is that Judy Ogala, the Will County board member, who I've been working with since she was a community activist fighting the Peatone Airport 30 years ago. She has just been appointed to be the county board representative on a Will County Ag Area Committee. And so I took this deep dive, and this committee, they have I think it's like 1,000 acres of land, but throughout the state of Illinois, there are 24 sort of farmer-led voluntary efforts to say we want to stay in agriculture for the next 10 years. All you other competing uses, take your projects elsewhere. And it turns out that this ag area concept, or an ag area activities, is the outgrowth of a 1980 law. And I'm looking at this law and realizing we need to look to update that law in the 2026 session. And so so Judy O'Gala, she's begun outreach. We've been reaching out to McHenry and Kane and Kendall to find out, well, what is your well, first of all, it's trying to find out what's going on in this Will County one, and then what do those landowners, what do they need, and how, and I think that becomes a good building block for to just to enable the Chicago Wilderness Alliance to partner in sort of updating that plan to meet current needs. And I think one areas I want to talk about this with Rep. Harper is let's be thinking about ag areas as well in terms of municipal geographies. I've been thinking for a long time, at some point urban agriculture term goes away, it just becomes agriculture. I think we really need to be emphasizing municipal agriculture, utilizing the services of the municipality, the sewer and water hookup that can benefit small scale farming. So that's another example. So next slide, please. What is it, or is that the last? Yeah, okay. Final point. So in 2020, I was working with the Soil and Water, Will South Cook Soil and Water Conservation District and the Will County Farm Bureau on a grant application to create a food system vision prize. And what's gone on in the intervening years just demonstrates the need, and really the Chicago Wilderness is the partner that can help move this forward. And just one final point, I was on a call, I don't know, Tim, were you on a call earlier this month? There was a regenerative agriculture activity, and it was sponsored by Rockefeller, and they are it came out of Brazil, and it was this group in the Amazon that's trying to develop a regenerative agriculture concept. Did you hear about that, Tim? Or yeah. Well, I listened in on this, and again, it's just building this broad-based cross-sector, partnership. But it just reminded me there was a 2024 study that Rockefeller did that where is it here? That increasingly severe and frequent disaster events over the last 3 decades have caused a worldwide decline of or a loss of nearly $4 trillion worth of crops and livestock production. So this report says the solution is regenerative agriculture. And early investors say that the practice, land management practice that, quote, maintain the commercial opportunity in ag via adaptation to changing climate conditions is a $4.5 trillion a year global investment opportunity. The trouble is, according to this 2024 Rockefeller report, all financing to date lacks scale and replicability. And one of the reasons is the lack of actual understanding of what regenerative agriculture is. So, folks, I think we're in the place to sort of define regenerative agriculture with this effort, using the committee, drive a narrative, uncover this agri-food regional economic model, a community planning piece that connects working land to natural land, whole of landscape goals, and then fifthly, a plan to pay for it and move this forward in the coming year. So anyway, with that, questions, thoughts?
So I just want to point out that the Will South Cook Soil and Water Conservation District has a farm tour coming up on July 16th, Bob, here in Crete. And they're going to see a century farm that is still actively farmed, and they're farmers that are thinking a lot about the future. So if you can make that, I would go either to the Soil and Water Conservation District's homepage or on Facebook. There's a phone number that you can call to make a reservation. But if you can do it, I would encourage it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and Tim, I think one of the ways we move this forward as we're putting, I'm just finalizing plans to put a budget together. I hope to get that done here in the next few days. But I'm just going to keep producing content for the local food forum. I'll write about that July 16th event, and we just need to get our message out in a ongoing, sustained way with a strategy behind it.
And by the way, I met with the Rockefeller Foundation last week and introduced this concept to them, and they were extremely excited and interested about it, and they're setting up another call. So good tie-in there.
Well,
Ted, you
that's fantastic. That I don't have the name of the gentleman in front of me, but he was saying from Rockefeller on this call, it was like people from all around the globe. I'll send you some notes from that, Tim. He said we need financial innovation. Well, it turns out that we've got this financial innovation plan that's just sitting right here. And one thing that's happened is a group out of the south side of Chicago, Experimental Station, is they've been leading an effort funded through the Illinois Department of Human Services to create an Illinois local food system roadmap. And everything we're doing, we need like this how can people from all walks of agriculture under a nature conservation framing, how can we all work together in one area? And that I think is going to inform any effective state and federal policy and help Rockefeller. Because the other thing they've got going on, did they talk about they're just beginning $100 million grant program just to improve school meals? Did they mention that?
Yeah. Yeah, food is health is one of their primary drivers right now. And it's, nutrient dense food is the connection between what we're talking about and what they want to accomplish, Bob. And so it's really about working with farmers on regenerative practices to ensure that the food that we are producing is of a higher quality. And so that's their sweet spot between what we're doing and their vision.
Fabulous. That's great news. Any other thoughts, questions?
I have a couple.
I'm sure you do.
One is, have you gotten to Amy Dahl yet, who works on the legislative stuff? And if not, I can introduce you to her this afternoon.
Who's that?
So Amy Dahl runs the CWA protection team right now, for lack of a better term. And she focuses, what she's focusing on right now, and this will change, but right now it's very legislative heavy, and they're going to start writing legislation over the summer. So
fantastic.
That's why I want you teed in with them, because if they take something up, I don't want to reinvent any wheels. So I think that would be a good connection to make.
Please, yeah.
The other thing that I have here is we haven't really been able to get traction on this idea of planning, right? In terms of getting the fiscal sponsors and getting the money and blah, blah, blah. And I know we're continuing to work on that. One thought I had, and I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who teaches at Penn State University, and he teaches in their landscape architecture department. He might be interested and able to take this up as a studio project in the spring of 2026 with his students. I don't know if that's too late, but that would essentially, they would do the process that we've been talking about doing the past year or two, but haven't found funding and partner interest in. So they could potentially take that up. And based on that, I'm also going to reach out to Mary Pat McGuire here at University of Illinois to see if she might be interested in the same concept.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I mean, the reality of this is that everyone needs a scaling mechanism. I mean, I look at, Tim, is the thing you're having on Wednesday, I'll write about that too. Is that where Julia Friedgood is speaking to your Farm Foundation event?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I'll plan on writing a local food forum article about that as well. But I knew Julia 30 years ago when I was getting involved in this field, and I've gotten her book and I'm reading it through. And there's, Will County tops the American Farmland Trust list for Midwest counties most likely to lose cropland by 2040. So number one, we have that, and that was a real interest to Claire Shipp from the Midwest Policy Director for AFT. But secondly, everything we're doing is replicable in other regions. And Ted, when you mentioned Penn State, I also think about there's a model to be done in metropolitan Philadelphia as well. It's almost like every region in America needs its own regenerative ag R&D center. You know, good luck finding a 7 square mile piece of land like ours, you know. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, yeah. So this is just really good. And Mary Pat McGuire, what does she do at U of I?
She is also a landscape architecture professor there.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just from a media perspective, we just start telling the story that we're like, oh, we don't even have the big guns. We don't even have the plan in place yet. We just already know that, you know, this is a better way to grow than, you know, da 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 da.
There's
So
a
that,
question in chat from Celeste and John has his hand raised, so I want to make sure we address those.
I can address Celeste's question. Celeste, part of this process is to come up with a land use plan. So how we would use those 6,000 acres or 5,000 acres, how many ever it is, in Peatone. We currently do not have a vision for that and the land and how all that's going to fit together, but it will be part of the process.
Okay.
And John Wasik?
Why don't you take Celeste's question first, Tim?
Oh, I did. I just answered it.
Oh, that was it. Okay. So, Bob, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I think to avoid the parochial interest in Will County, a state bill would be the best way to approach this. And you'd probably get more support from downstate legislators if you kind of crafted this as a all state inclusive bill to promote regenerative agriculture. And the complexity of Illinois politics is that typically, if something's focused on one county, especially in Northeast Illinois, and then the downstaters say, no, that doesn't apply to us, but and they'll vote against it. And especially if they perceive it as a anti-ag sort of bill. And I highly admire what you're doing in terms of trying to promote this in the media, but when the rubber hits the road, you're going to have to get some very broad-based support on this. And I know Tim understands this probably better than anybody, but um, you know, I would suggest if you haven't already done this, I probably think you have, but reaching out to Danny Robles at Illinois Environmental Council. That's Danny Robles, Robles. He's the legislative liaison for IEC right now. And of course, Jen Walling, you'd have to get her on board. She's the CEO of IEC. But IEC, in my humble opinion, having worked with legislators and environmental lobbies, is probably the most potent and effective environmental lobby. And I think if you could pitch them on your plan and Tim, I think they'd kind of see the light on this. The last year they've been focused on, transportation, clean transportation, the RTA reorganization. So they've been, necessarily distracted by that issue. But I think if you were to sit down with Danny and John to really tell them what this is all about and how it would benefit the entire state, I think you get some receptive ears in that conversation. And also, you probably know this as well, is that Chris Kessler is currently hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, so he's a little bit out of pocket. But Emily Ricewig is currently kind of taking on that role. She's wearing a lot of hats these days, especially for CWA, and she's really got a lot on her plate. But she would be important to get into the conversation. And Mike Davidson, who is the new CEO of Open Lands, those would be really primary people to have as champions of this. And again, I know I have the greatest respect for Will County, having had a lot of my family grow up there and live and die there. So I think it's essential that you broaden your appeal a little bit. And I'm talking as a legislative person who does this on a fairly regular basis. And the broader the coalition, the more real strength you're going to have in your argument and in your pitch. So that's just my one man's humble opinion. But And if you're looking for more people to bring into the fold, I can make a lot of more suggestions, but Tim and I have talked about this a little bit, but you know, there's so many other interests here that would probably get on board if you sort of make a very concentrated pitch on what we want to do and why we want to do it and the environmental impact of it. So that's kind of how I see it at this point.
Excellent, John. Let me go a couple things and then get to Ted's question. First of all, I think I may have misspoke. In terms of the media strategy, it's not only about Will County. I mean, it's kind of like we want to generate content in what is the region's agriculture and what does it mean to us? And one of the most dynamic narratives that will emerge is what you guys are doing in Lake County with with the community college breaking ground in Waukegan last month for a urban food center. And that it's kind of like, so you got 16 mil that you're putting together to do a project there. Well, every community college could be a nexus for a $16 million pot of money. How do we even begin to get there? So the regional, the narrative is really, we're going to uncover stories all over the region. And I think it's very pro agriculture. I in the 30 years since I first met up with American Farmland Trust, and they said, 30 years ago, people think food comes from the grocery store. I think in the last 30 years, I've seen a greater division, like more hostility towards industrial agriculture over the last 30 years when I got involved in this around suburban sprawl. So I'm looking, how do we build the bridge between community centered and commercial scale agriculture and realize that we're both in this together? But I get it. And then Ted, so is Amy Dahl, I mean, Jen Walling is definitely a target to reach out to
Okay,
IEC.
so that
Is
was going to
Amy
be one
working
of
with her?
that's one of
Yeah.
my comments, Bob. That group does not have Danny Robles in it, but it does have Lindsay Keeney from IEC, and she can get to Danny pretty easily because they're from the same organization. And I can show you this, but there's a whole flow chart that this is based in and compartmentalized in the Illinois is Beautiful Coalition. So that might be an opportunity as well. The other comment I have is, Tim, might there be an opportunity to hook the Rockefeller Foundation when you meet with them on this idea in terms of, hey, can you help us fast track to a grant, or is this worth a grant? That kind of stuff, because I think we're at a point now where, gosh, how do I say this? And Laura, please cut me off if I go too far with this. But this is a Congress off year. Historically, that means that in the last couple cycles, grants are being written, right? And we have a team that could dive into this if we have a better than average chance at something, if that makes sense. But I don't know that I really want to go into grant writing year cold without many leads on this, if that makes sense. So I don't know if there's going to be that opportunity when you meet with them, Tim, but it might be worth exploring a little bit to see how we can get this going.
And if I can add one more thing, and then I'll peel off, but if you have an ability to reach CMAP, and I know the CEO, Aaron, and I know Holly Hudson is one of their environmental people over there as well. It should be part of their, long range strategic plan, but it really isn't, because they sort of say, well, sustainability is important in planning, but in the past they've been focused on highways and things like that. But is there a comprehensive, regenerative ag strategy for the region? Not that I'm aware of, but it could be, and CMAP could champion that. If you talk to Erin Edelman, she's like the CEO of CMAP, and I see her on a fairly regular basis. But Holly Hudson is also a good sort of entry point into that discussion. But it needs to be in their plan. It needs to be in other counties' plans, and we're slowly getting to it. But you know, it's mostly done through the forest preserve at this point, and trying to expand it. But it's a heavy lift because it's not something that, you know, general public agencies like counties and CMAP have really taken a good look at, because it's like agriculture is this other realm that they figure isn't part of, you know, public planning, because, you know, most farmland's privately owned. But, you know, I would start with those folks as well. And, you know, if you need help connecting, I'm glad to help facilitate.
Thanks, John. CMAP's essential. And actually, Judy O'Gala is going to be reaching out to the Will County board member on CMAP, mayor of Romeoville, John Noak. So yeah, right now, yeah, there's a whole this ag area concept. It's kind of like Judy's thinking maybe all the farmers around the proposed I-57 interchange and around the airport site itself begin to establish an ag area in this new and improved model that could be brought forward in the General Assembly next year. So, but thank you for that, John. And then Jess has a question. The Illinois Sustainable Ag Coalition. I don't know. That's the soil health group, isn't it? That Tim, are they like involved in the Growing with Ag committee? I mean, I don't know which group that is. I would say
I know
they
they're
haven't been involved
in
as one of
Chicago
those.
Wilderness, but they haven't been involved in our group, I don't think.
Yeah. I think that this whole agenda becomes a way to help IEC reach out to them in a more impactful way than just, you know, nickel and dime soil and water conservation grants. This is much larger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
this is, I don't know if you can hear me, but somebody from AFT is coordinating that group right now. And my understanding is that they're mostly involved with the nutrient loss reduction strategy. And so I think they just have a good network among some of the, you know, various farm advisory and like ag conservation groups that might be useful to draw into this.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. Well, thanks. I got a good set of list here of things to do. Tim, I will plan to write a local food forum piece about Wednesday, and love to talk to Rockefeller, and I'll be putting an outreach letter, Ted, together for open lands as well. This has been super helpful, just fleshing this out a little bit here today.
Excellent. Anybody have anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting the meeting together and being so informative about developments, you know, in Will County. It's I'm impressed. It's pretty amazing. You guys should know, while we were having our meeting, I'm literally, I live right in town in Crete by Smoky Joe's, for those of you who know Smoky Joe's on Dixie Highway. And I've been gardening and pulling weeds and digging and treating my house as if it is a farm, even though I live right in town in Crete. But anyway, just want to say thank you again for the information. It's been just been terrific. I look forward to the next follow-up.
Terrific. Thank
Monica,
you for joining us.
Monica, I also live on Dixie Highway by Smoky Joe's, so mine's the big yellow house. I don't know which house is yours, but I'm the yellow house.
Well, I live 3 blocks away, so if you go down Burville to Austin, I'm the yellow house with the skylights, and I have a heart-shaped garden at the sidewalk. So that's where I am.
It's beautiful. Well, on that, I think we're all done. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
That was
everybody.
great. Tim, it's
Have a good
great
weekend,
news
everybody.
about
Thank
the
you.
Rockefeller Foundation.
Yes, I'm excited about it. They're, I think, really trying to merge their multiple visions on food and ag into one, and that's really encouraging.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.